It was Jesse Hernandez, if you can bring him in.
Correct.
Please be seated. We're back on the record in cause number 94-09328, the state of Texas versus Daniel Villegas. We are back from our afternoon break. When we broke, Ms. Butterworth had finished her direct examination of Mr.
I had, Judge, but I'm going to interrupt. I have one quick question that I wanted to clean up if I could, and then I'll repass them.
Okay.
Mr. Hernandez, I apologize. The copy that you have in front of you, is it 2 pages that you've got?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I was looking at the 1 page. Do me a favor, look at the 2nd page, the back of mine that I didn't realize I had. And in fairness, it does look like in 1993, you do say that you picked out a 1976 Chevrolet Caprice as a similar car of the car that you were shot, the car that shot at you. Do you see that?
Yes.
And so I was mistaken. I missed this on the back of my statement. So back in 93, you did tell the officers it looked like a 1976 Chevrolet Caprice.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I pass the witness.
Mr. Spencer, you may proceed with your examination.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Hernandez.
Good afternoon.
As you know, my name is Joe Spencer, and I'm one of the attorneys for Daniel Villegas. I'm going to ask you some questions. If you don't understand what I'm saying, let me know. I'm going to reword it or rephrase it. Is that fair enough?
Yes, sir.
And actually, what the prosecutor didn't show you is actually the 3rd page of your statement. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
That appear to be your initial?
Yes, sir.
And do you actually identify a 1976 Caprice as a type of vehicle?
Yes, sir.
So you were consistent back then as you are 25 years later?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hernandez, did you know Danny Villegas in 1993?
No, sir.
Did you know him in the year 2000?
No, sir.
Did you know him in the year 2010?
No, sir.
You were a victim the early morning in 1993 on April 10th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You'd gone to a party or a gathering, more like a gathering is my understanding.
More like a gathering.
More like a gathering with you and several of your friends. And then when your cousin didn't come and pick you all up, you all decided you needed to leave. It was getting late.
Yes, we were told by the girls and that their parents said, you know what, you guys need to leave.
Right. And you all went outside on Jamaica Street, and you all stayed there a little while hoping your cousin would come and pick you up.
Yes, sir.
And you all were horse playing, and when I say you all, Armando and
It was Armando and Bobby. They were wrestling.
They were wrestling. Okay. And making some noise, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did it cause a concern to you because it was maybe causing a disturbance to the household?
Yes, I know. I mean, if it was my house, like today, if I heard something like that, I'd get pretty irate.
So out of respect for the household, you decided, guys, we got to leave.
Yes. And I told them, I'm sorry, I apologize. We were waiting for my cousin, so we'll leave.
Okay. And when you were on Jamaica Street, did you notice that another vehicle had come by and just kind of driven by? Did you notice any other vehicle?
I didn't really notice any vehicles, no.
Okay, fair enough. You told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that Fairbanks is a fairly dark street, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there another reason you didn't want to go down Fairbanks besides the fact that it was a dark street?
At the time, there was a lot of gang activity in that area, especially in Shenandoah. I'm sorry. On Shenandoah, over here was more like what you would at the time was a gang called LML, and I wanted to stay away from this area. So that's why I told the guys, you know what, we're already here. Let's just stay in a well-lit area where there's more traffic and will be visible to other people if anything was to happen.
The LML, is that Los Midnight Locos?
Yes, sir.
And are you aware of the Flores brothers?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Terrorize that area?
They They lived on Shenandoah, so that was more like their area that was there.
Were you aware if Armando Lasso had had any confrontations with any of the Flores
No,
brothers?
none whatsoever.
Okay. When you decided to walk down Trans Mountain Road, and when you get up to this street, Electric Street, you indicated to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that your recollection is, and if you don't mind looking there, Jesse, that the fight scene or the wrestling between Mando and Robert England was here,
Yes.
and the car was parked here. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
If Robert England's body was actually found just not a little bit further up in this area, and the shell casings were found here, you wouldn't quarrel with the physical evidence that's there, would you?
No.
Okay. All you know that not too far after you turned up Electric Street is when the boys started wrestling and Mando took his shirt off and put it on the fence, correct?
Yes, sir.
So eventually you saw the car that pulled up, turned off the lights. Was that car on the right side of the street, that is the correct side of its driving, or was it on the opposite side on oncoming traffic?
From the glance that I saw when it came and turned off its lights, it did like a motion, like if it had turned and parked on the opposite side.
On the
of
opposite
traffic.
side. And at that point, your understanding is that Mando and Robert thought that might still have been your cousin?
I don't think so.
You don't know?
They
Okay.
didn't pay attention to the car because they were not looking at the car. They were wrestling, and their view was more towards the tanks. I glanced at the vehicle, and that's when my heart started racing, and I said, "We need to go, guys." And that's when words were yelled out from the vehicle.
Okay. And then what ends up happening is somebody says something from the car.
Yes, sir.
Mando and Robert start walking towards the car.
Yes.
And as soon as they take 2 or 3 steps, is that when you see either a flash and you hear the shots fired?
Yes, sir.
And you said you actually heard a ping. Was that a ping, what you think is a ricochet of a bullet off the fence,
Yes.
which is right behind you,
Yes, sir.
and you run?
Yes, sir.
And you're assuming Mando, Robert, and Juan are all running with you?
I assume they were running. You know, I mean, in anybody, you're shy. You're not going to just keep walking towards a vehicle. You're going to run. You're going to have a reaction.
You couldn't go further in this direction
No, there's a chain link fence.
because of the chain link fence. So you had to run along the chain link fence,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
As you were running along the chain link fence, could you see what the vehicle that shot at you was doing?
When I ran from peripheral image from view, I just see a car just leave.
So as you're running out of your peripheral vision, the car is parallel driving the direction you all are running.
Yes, sir.
Were you scared, Jesse?
I was scared. I thought they were going to meet us at the corner and continue shooting at us.
You didn't stop running till you made it by the trash can?
I didn't stop running, sir, until I reached the dumpster.
That's when you and that's when you and Juan Medina hooked up or found out, okay, we're both okay. And where's Bobby and where's Mando?
Yes, sir.
And you told very candidly to the jury that you just wanted to go home.
Yes, sir.
You wanted to just get away as quick as you could. Juan talked you into, we got to go back.
Yes, sir.
Now, the prosecutors kind of asked you about, well, exactly how long were you there? Were you there 20 minutes? Do you know how long you were there, Jesse?
Honestly, no. Time just elapsed. I mean, I was so adrenaline and scared out of my life. It's not like if I said, well, 15 minutes passed. I just was not in the moment. I was not there. All I had was television, and my goal was to get home.
Eventually, you all crossed the street, as you said, closer to Fairbanks. You crossed Electric Street and started walking towards back where the boys were.
Yes, sir.
By then, you had already seen that there was some lights flashing.
Yes, sir.
What did you think of when you saw that there was lights flashing?
I thought that something bad had happened because I saw an ambulance and I saw police cars. And I was just thinking the worst, but at the same time I was just hoping that they were there and okay, and we're just gonna gather together and see what happened and make it home.
Thinking of the worst, hoping for the best.
Yes, sir.
So eventually, the police understand that you and Juan were with Mando and Robert, correct?
Yes.
And you get separated.
We get separated.
You were able to see Mando, you never saw Bobby.
I never saw Bobby.
And Detective Marquez took you down to the police station.
Yes, sir.
And that's a statement that they asked you about, that you gave,
Yes,
correct?
sir. Yes, sir.
3 in the morning, so it was just a couple of hours after you know one of your friends was dead.
I knew something was wrong when I saw them shining their lights, and they all fixated on in one area of their lights. I knew something was bad.
And when you gave the statement to Detective Marquez, was eventually he let you go, you went home?
Yes, sir.
Did there come another time when you visited with Detective Marquez again?
Yes, sir. He picked me up.
And how long after the April 10th, 1993, did Detective Marquez pick you up?
It was days after Mondo's funeral.
And did he take you back to the Crimes Against Persons office in Five Points
Yes, sir.
and question you?
He took me to a room, I believe he would say an interrogation room, because I can remember there was a window that looked like a mirror and a table with a couple of chairs.
The first time he took your statement, it was in a cubicle, correct?
Yes, sir.
The second time he took you in an interrogation room,
Yes, sir.
accused you of killing those boys.
Yes, sir.
Were you scared?
I was scared and confused at the same time.
Did you tell him that you didn't do it?
I said, "How could you say that?" I said, "How could you say that, sir?" And he says, "Your friend Juan seen you did it. You had every motive to do it. You have Bobby's ring. You have his beeper. For all we know, you even wanted his girlfriend, and you wanted him dead." And I just couldn't fathom that he would say that, or even Juan would say that. And he said, "Well, you know what? You're gonna have to explain it to the judge because they're gonna fry your ass." And he walked out, and I just put my head down, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And
What were you thinking?
I was already thinking, how did I do it? I was already imagining that I did it. But then I said, how did I get the gun? Where did I get the gun? And I just kind of like, I was not there in the moment anymore.
How old were you, Jesse?
I was 17.
Did you come close to confessing?
If he pushed a little longer, yeah. All I wanted to do was just leave that room and go home.
Did he cuss at you?
Yeah, he cursed at me. He gave me, when everything started, he gave me a notepad and he says, "I need you to give me detail, word for word, exactly what had happened." And I wrote it on a legal notepad, a yellow legal notepad. And he grabs it and he starts reading it. And he tosses it at me. He says, "Let's cut the bullshit. You know it and I know it, you're lying. So why don't you just confess and say you did it?" It's because your friend's saying you did it. And for my friend Juan to say that, I was like, why would he say that? What was his motive? What was the reason for him to say that? He has to be true.
You even thought it had to be true if Juan is saying it.
Yeah.
Did you shoot your friends, Jesse?
No, sir. No.
You were there when your friends were killed and you were shot at.
Yes, sir.
But you came this close to telling that detective that you had done it.
Yes, sir.
Did it still bother you 25 years later?
It bothers me because every time I talk about it, I feel like I'm in that room again. I'm a child again. I'm not an adult. It's like I'm frozen in that time.
Pass the witness.
Ms. Butter,
You and I have never met before, Mr. Hernandez, is that correct?
No, ma'am.
That's why I asked if you needed to look at your statement before, because we've never met, you didn't agree to meet with anybody from the prosecution. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
All right. Have you met with the defense before regarding the testimony that you're giving to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury today?
Prior to what?
Prior to today?
No.
You've never met with these attorneys before? You've never spoken to them about this case?
I've spoken to him on the previous trial. It's the only time I ever spoke to him.
Okay. I want to talk about John Mimbella for a second. Who is John Mimbella, Mr. Hernandez?
John Mimbella,
I don't object to the relevance.
Who is John Mimbella?
John Mimbella is, I don't know how you want me to say, who is he?
He's the owner of Mimbella Construction here in El Paso.
Yes.
Would you agree with me? He's a wealthy man?
I wouldn't know his expenses. I wouldn't know.
what was your answer, sir?
So I wouldn't know if he's a wealthy man.
Okay. You've met with John Mimbella before regarding the testimony that you just gave to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Is that correct?
No, I'm going to object. May we approach?
Let's approach. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a couple more things I need to take care of. You're not going to be out there long, so don't start reading parts of the newspaper that I allow you to read. We're bringing you back in shortly.
Please rise for the jury.
Please be seated. Record to reflect we're currently outside the presence of the jury. The court just need to put some matters on the record with regard to Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez, I know this is still something that gets you emotional.
Yes, sir.
But earlier, when I swore all the witnesses in, one of the issues I talked about is that this jury needs to proceed under the legal assumption that this is the first time this case has gone to trial.
Yes, sir.
And also, your testimony that you gave in the past wasn't in a trial, but it was, but you would believe it was because it was a writ of habeas corpus proceeding. I need you to understand that I cannot have you continue to use the word trial. You can talk about previously having said something, but in terms of saying trial or writ hearing or previous hearing, that is one of the things that both parties are trying very hard for this jury not to take into account so that it will be held against or for one of the parties.
And I apologize, Your Honor, because
I'm understanding what you're doing. Throughout the couple minutes, there's going to be some questioning going back and forth. You're doing fine. I just need you to relax. And I'm going to bring the jury back in, but I did want to bring that to your attention because it's my duty to do so, but I needed that out of the meeting so that we can accomplish that.
Okay, so just for the courts, Mr. Hernandez did testify in the other two trials.
I know he did, but we can't even talk about those. The only one I'm familiar with where this type of testimony came out was at the writ hearing, and I think Ms. Butterworth alluded to that being more recent statements. If they're ready, bring it back. They're not ready. They're not that ready, guys. Trust me. If you guys want to do some calisthenics, you go right ahead. I'm like juror number 9. I only did 1 already, so I'm done. Please be seated. The court has brought the jury back into the courtroom to continue the testimony in this case.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Hernandez, are you aware of how Mr. John Mimbella is related to the defendant, Daniel Villegas, in this case?
no, not clearly.
Okay. At some point, did John Mimbella approach you and want to talk about the facts of this case?
He approached me, and on that, I don't know if I could talk, but on that evening, he went to my apartment. I had a knock on the door. I was like, my girlfriend's like, who did you invite? Who was at the door? I was like, I have no idea. So I looked at the peephole and I saw two gentlemen standing at the doorway, and she said, okay, I'll go to the room, and I answered the door, and they said, Jesse Hernandez? I was like, yes, sir. I was like, we want to talk to you about a murder. And I was like, I'm sorry, you have the wrong person.
Do you remember, Mr. Hernandez, more or less when this was? Can you try to give us more or less a date of when?
I can only remember the year when I met my fiance.
What year was that?
In 08.
08. Is 08 when you were approached by Mr. Mimbella, or 08 is when you remember being engaged to your fiance?
It was both. It was in that year.
Okay, so can I assume that in 2008 that is the year that we're going to give that you were approached by John Mimbella?
To my best of my recollection, it was around 08. It could have been 07. I really don't remember.
Okay. And Mr. Mimbella approached you wanting to talk about the facts of this particular murder case. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Mimbella wanted to talk to you specifically about Daniel Villegas. Is that correct?
All he said was, look, I'm not here to change your mind or anything like that. All I want to do is just, look.
I'm sorry.
Object to any hearsay?
Just do us a favor, listen to the question, and just answer what you said.
You were approached by Mr. Mimbella. Is
Yes.
that correct?
And Mr. Bonilla.
In Mr. Bonilla. Who is Mr. Bonilla?
He was a private detective.
And he was hired by Mr. Mimbella. Is that
No,
correct?
I'm gonna
Or
object
do
to
you
him.
know? I'm going to ask for a little bit of leeway at this point,
A
Judge.
little bit of leeway, but not, I will cut it off if it starts suggesting answers that you may.
Do you know who Mr. Bonilla was in regards to,
I didn't know who he was at the time.
did anybody let you know that he was a private investigator?
I don't remember. I just remember two gentlemen in my apartment.
Okay. How many times did you meet with John Mimbella and Mr. Bonilla?
Where I can remember, maybe two, 3 times.
And is that fair to say starting in 2008?
Yes.
Do you remember that you have said before that it was 4 times that you met with John Mimbella? Does that sound about right?
Well, from this point to what point? I mean, I don't know what time frame you're talking about.
Okay, well, you've said 4 before, and now in front of the jury you want to say 2 to 3. So I want to, you've said 4 before.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be as many times as 4?
But like I said, what time frame?
Could it be more than 4? Ever in your
Them
life?
together?
Let me rephrase the question. In your whole life, up until testifying today, how many times have you met with John Mimbella?
You said with Mr. Bonilla and Mimbella.
Okay. Let me start with John Mimbella.
How many
many
I've seen
times
John?
have you met with John Mimbella?
From that point to now?
In your whole life?
It's going to be, it's even here in court. I might be about 5 times.
Where the beginning, as best as you can, the first time you were approached was in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
I believe so. I remember, like I said, it could have been 07 or 08. I don't really remember.
And you met with a private or an investigator, Bonilla, also along with John Mimbella. Is
Yes.
that correct? How many times do you think you met with Bonilla?
Just Mr. Bonilla? It was never just Mr. Bonilla. They were always together.
So Mr. Mimbella was always with Mr. Bonilla.
Yes.
And how was he explained who he was? What was your understanding of who he was?
Afterwards, he explained to me that he had hired a private investigator.
I'm going to object to hearsay, Your Honor.
I don't think you understood his question. Was your question, how was Mr. Mimbella related to the accused, or what was Mr. Bonilla's relationship to Mr. Mimbella?
It was, how was Mr. Bonilla explained to you as to who he was, why he was there?
Sustained.
Did Mr. Bonilla ever tell you what he did for a living?
Yes.
And what does he do for a living?
He told me he was a police officer for many years and retired and became a detective.
Did you understand that he was working on this case on behalf of Daniel Villegas?
Yes.
Did John Mimbella take you to the Sun Bowl in January of 2010?
He did not take me.
Did he provide you tickets to the Sun Bowl in January of 2010?
He provided us, the people there at the rally. It was not just me.
Okay. Did John Mimbella take you to a boxing match in August of 2010?
He took me to talk to the producers of Dateline.
Did he take you to a boxing match?
I was going to get to, he took me to see the producers of Dateline. The very next day, he said, you know what, I'm sponsoring a fighter. Would you like to go? And I said, well, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. He's like, yeah, we'll just, you know, since we're here, we still have to talk to Dateline. Let's go see a fight, because I have tickets.
Okay, so he took you to a boxing match. Yes, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Did Mr. Mimbella fly you to Los Angeles in September of 2010, where you sat ringside at a boxing match?
Yes.
You've had an opportunity, Mr. Hernandez. You gave your statement that I've spoken to you about, that was taken in the early morning hours of April of 1993. That's one statement. You've had an opportunity to talk about what happened with you and your friends in 1993 and 1994. Are you following me?
No.
Have you had an opportunity to talk about what happened to your friends in 1993 and 1994?
I don't object to being vague and ambiguous. Talk about it to whom, when.
Overruled.
You've talked, the testimony that you gave to this jury, you've had an opportunity to talk about that testimony in 1994 and 95. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean by 94, 95. I don't reckon those dates.
In 1994 or 1995, did you ever tell anybody about this second meeting with Detective Marquez taking you into a room, picking you up later, and making all these threats to you?
My mother.
Publicly, a
Just my
judge,
mother.
a lawyer,
Just my
a
mother.
police officer,
Just my mother.
anybody,
Just
just
my
your
mother.
mother? Okay. When you were speaking of this incident in 1994, you never mentioned the second meeting with Detective Marquez, correct? When you were questioned and talking about this incident, that never came up in 1994, correct?
I don't understand why you're trying to say 94. What was in 94?
Judge, may I approach?
I need to, there are some other things I need to take care of. Don't read the paper stuff.
All right.
Be seated, please.
Judge, how about, can I fix it this way? Oh,
We're currently outside the presence of the jury.
may I refer to these as a prior hearing?
Let's do this. Let's question him the way you were, but put what we're talking about so he understands what 1994 and 1995 mean, so that he understands we're talking about the two previous trials.
Okay.
But then we're going to go back after that and take that out in front of this jury. Mr. Hernandez, you know what happened in 1994?
No.
We had a trial on this case.
Yeah, I really don't remember. I remember the trial, but I don't know when it took place. I don't
And that's what
remember.
we're going to talk about it a little bit so that you understand what her questioning is and is going to be when the jury comes back. Because you're getting a little frustrated and I don't want you to talk about some of the things we've already discussed. So she's going to put some meat to this. Once you understand, this jury's coming back in and we're taking out the words trial and sticking to the years that she's talking about.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Judge. And so for
Question it now,
clarification,
and use the word trial. That's all.
I just, for clarification, when the jury comes back in, Judge, is counsel allowed to talk about these as prior hearings?
Prior, if we can get away with prior statements, I'm more comfortable.
Okay.
You know, prior statements that you made in 94 when discussing this incident. When given the opportunity to make prior statements in 1994, you're going to say that this never came up, things like
Okay.
that.
As long as the witness now understands that when I say 94 and 95, I'm talking about the times that you testified in the two prior trials.
You may want to bring up the year we had hearings, 2012, 2013, where this may have been, from the state's point of view, the first time they may have heard of this, so that he has the context that we get into those dates. So you want to question him and see if he's understanding. It won't be a long question.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm almost done with my questions.
No, but if you want to ask him so that we see what his responses are going to be.
Well, just so that you know, what year was the writ? It was 2011, or was it multiple years?
I think,
All of the evidentiary portion was in 2011.
So if you're asked about anything in 2011, we're talking about, without it being able to say the word writ, we're talking about the writ, or the most recent time you would have testified about this in 2011.
are you understanding now what she meant by 94?
Vaguely, I vaguely, I mean, and you say 94, you're just gonna ask me if I ever spoke to anybody in regards to what she asked me.
Made a public statement when given the opportunity to discuss this matter. Did you ever bring up the market situation?
No.
That's what she's expecting your answers to be, because I don't think you did in 94 or 95. And that's, but she's trying to say the year without letting this jury think about anything that may have happened that we're not talking about. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
If you're ready, Ms.
I'm ready.
Butterworth, okay.
I'm
bring it
ready.
back in.
All rise.
Be seated, please. Record your time. The court has brought the jury back into the courtroom. Continue with the testimony this way.
Thank you. Let me start again. Mr. Hernandez, you gave a statement to the El Paso Police Department right after this occurred in April of 1993, correct?
Yes.
Then you had an opportunity to make additional statements regarding this incident and being questioned on this incident in 1994.
Yes.
Yes. You never mentioned this new part about the detective following up days later and taking you into a room and making the threats that you've testified to today. Did you in 1994?
Can you ask the question again?
Did you ever in 1994 ever mention this part about Detective Marcus following up a few days later, locking you in a room and making the threats?
I mentioned it to my mother.
In 1994.
In 94, I mentioned it to my mother.
In 1994, when you were making statements regarding this issue and questioned on this issue, not by your mother, sir, in a prior hearing, did you mention that in 1994?
I was never asked. No.
But you never mentioned it.
No.
You never said it.
No.
In 1995, when you also had an opportunity to make statements regarding this issue and be questioned regarding this issue, did you ever mention this new part about Detective Marcus threatening you days later after that initial 1993 statement?
No.
In 1994, when you were questioned regarding Rudy Flores and Frank Flores, you did not know them. Is that correct?
I knew Frank and Rudy.
Pardon me?
I knew them.
So when you said, I don't know Rudy Flores and Frank Flores, you did know them?
No, I knew them, but I didn't know if they were involved in anything to do with this.
Okay. And you didn't know that they were involved allegedly in a gang named LML?
No, I knew they were in LML.
Okay. The question for you, sir, back in 1994 are the leaders of the gang LML Rudy Flores and Frank Flores? And your answer is, I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know, because the ones I knew that were the leaders were the Olivas family.
Okay. Has the LML gang, to the best of your knowledge, ever threatened you, Bobby, or Armando? No.
No.
Would you agree with that? Do you have any problems with the LML gang?
No.
No. Have you had an opportunity to review your statement from 93, your statement from 94, and your statement from 1995? Have you had an opportunity to review those?
I don't know what statements, I don't remember just seeing one statement.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? May the record reflect I'm showing defense counsel statements from this witness from 1994 and 1995. Take your time, sir, and I want you to find for me in those 2 times that you were questioned about this incident. And take your time. Anything about when you're running away from this offense that a car was driving by you that you're seeing in your peripheral vision?
Yes. He doesn't say anything about my peripheral vision.
When we're referring to John Mandela, do you see him in the courtroom here today, Mr. Hernandez?
May I stand?
Sure.
Oh, yes, I see him.
You see him? Can you do me a favor and can you point to and identify Mr. John Mandela?
This is John dressed in black.
Mr. Mandela, would you please stand? So this is the individual that you've met with before regarding your testimony in this case. Thank you. And you wouldn't agree to meet with us to talk about your testimony, is that correct?
Question asked and answered, Your Honor.
I don't want to speak to anybody. Sorry.
I pass the witness. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Spencer?
Mr. Hernandez, it's been suggested to you that you never mentioned prior to today that you didn't think the car was following you. But actually, you have a copy. Did the prosecutor leave that with you?
That wasn't my question. I asked for peripheral vision, Judge, for clarification of the record.
In the question that was asked to you, I want to make sure the record is clear. This is a question. When you saw the muzzle flash and you knew they were shooting at you and you start running north, your peripheral vision lets you see that the car is also driving north on Electric Street. Your answer, well, the corner of my eye would be my peripheral vision, yes. You gave that testimony in 2011, correct?
Yes.
She didn't ask you about 2011, did she?
No.
Okay. And then when she's asking you about the first time you tried the case, the first time that they asked you about this, question, page 40, and was there anything in the direction that you ran? Well, when that happened, I thought the car was following us. so we hid behind a dumpster. That's what you've been consistent with every time you've testified. Isn't that true, Mr.
Yes,
Hernandez?
sir.
So the suggestion by the prosecutor that somehow you just came up with this now, that's not true, is it?
No.
And were you ever asked in 93 or 94 about the second time that Detective Marquez picked you up?
No, sir.
But when you were asked about it in 2011, you talked about it, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And when I asked you about it for the first time, that's when you told them about the threats. And everything you told this jury, you told them in 2011, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And they know that, don't they?
Yes, sir.
They're somehow trying to suggest to you that, did John Menvela bribe you?
No, sir.
Would you take money to deny justice for your friends?
No, sir.
Is money more important than justice for your friends?
Justice is what I want.
Are you lying to this jury about what you saw?
No, sir. No.
So when the prosecutor didn't ask you about those other things, it's kind of like when she forgot to ask you about this caprice that she told you earlier, or suggested to the jury that you didn't say in your first statement,
Yes,
that
sir.
you did say. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Class of witness.
The first time you mentioned that the car is in your peripheral vision is in 2011. Isn't that correct, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
And that is after meeting Menvela, after going to LA with Menvela, after the 6 times you've met with Menvela. Is that correct?
Yes.
You never said that in 93, 94, or 95. Is that correct?
I was never asked, no.
I pass the witness.
That's right. You were never asked.
No, sir.
Class of witness.
May this witness be finally excused or subject to recall?
Subject to recall.
Mr. Hernandez, I do need you to leave a phone number with my bailiff, and then you're free to go. Should we need you, you'll get a call, and we would need you back within 20 minutes of getting out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah?
Thank you.
The court does not like starting and stopping with the permission of the lawyers we have. I like an entire witness to finish, but they've been gracious to, so that we can have our breaks. I don't anticipate a witness that can be done in the next 30 minutes. So I'm actually going to send you home a lot faster than I thought. I'm sending you home under the following instructions. Well, I'm not sending you. I'm letting you leave the courtroom under the following instructions. You're not to discuss this case with anyone. You're not to remain within the hearing of anybody discussing this case. You're not to discuss this case among yourselves. You're not to read any newspaper articles, listen to any radio broadcast, or view any television programs which may discuss this case. With regard about talking among yourselves, I want you to talk among yourselves. You are in this together, an individual. What I do not want from the minute I finish is discussions about the case. That should not happen until after you've heard me read the charge to you and have closing arguments. Get to know each other. I'm giving you 2 more instructions. Have a pleasant evening and rest. So we're going to continue with the trial of this case tomorrow. If you guys can have them back by 8:30, after you take them back, I need you to come back in so I can give you some more instructions.
All right.
Please be seated. We'll stand at recess for the trial until 8:30. What I'd like for the lawyers to do is try to be here around 8 in case some things come up that we need to take care of so that we can get more evidence in. Where do you think we look so far? Do you anticipate without only the two of your case, being able to finish your case tomorrow?
No, sir.
Or
We have a full day of evidence tomorrow, and I do not think we will rest tomorrow.
Wednesday by noon?
I think that's about right.
Okay.
But we'll have a lot clearer idea at the end of the day tomorrow.
At the end of the day tomorrow, Mr. Spencer, depending on where you think they're at, if the defense thinks they're going to put on evidence, it's probably going to be late in the morning or early afternoon. Anything we need to resolve before I let you guys get back to your case?
Not from the state.
Late in the morning, Thursday?
They think, yes, Thursday. Okay. Thursday. Yes. They say tomorrow isn't going to happen. It may be as early as Thursday morning, but it looks like it's going to be more toward noon Thursday. You guys be safe.
We're good.
All right.